Well, so here's what we need to tell you. The Ghana Prison Service has disclosed that over 7,000 ex-convicts are back in jail, raising concerns over national security and congestion in Ghana's prison facilities. Now, official data released by the service earlier today indicates that some 1,111 ex-convicts returned to prison in just 2020 alone. Also, the demographics is indicating to us that more young people between the ages of 12 and 35 are filling up our prisons. So here's a breakdown for you in terms of the figures. There you have it on your screens. Number of persons who have been convicted in all in 5 years. You have 38,589. That's the total number that we're dealing with. But if it comes to the age groupings, as you see on your screens right now, you have those between 18 to 35 years being 31,018. We have those ranging from 36 to 47 years being 4,448. Then for those who are ranging somewhere between 46 to 55 years, we have 1,559. And then the figure goes on. We have those who are within 46 to 55, as I indicated earlier, representing 1,559. And 56 to 65 years is 715. The number decreases when you move to the age bracket of 66 to 69 years. And then for those within the 70 range is 168. But then there is more for us to indicate to you. If you look at the convicted criminals in terms of the focus on the youth population, particularly those between the ages of 18 and 35, what you have now is that 80.3% of all persons convicted between 2015 and 2020 are mostly the youth. And that's a staggering figure that we're looking at right here on the polls. The fact that more and more young people are going to jail. But what more do you need to know? So in terms of the crimes that are being committed, you have, for instance, stealing, defilement, robbery, and assault. These are the major crimes that ends a lot of people in jail. But then in terms of the ranking, and we'll show that to you shortly, let's bring that to you shortly. Defilement appears to be one of the major issues that is also topping the chart as well. So these are some of the major crimes that you have between 2015 and 2020. But there's more that you also need to know about this. The facts that this is, of course, having an impact on the number of persons that we have in the prison cells. Already, the Ghana Prison Service has been complaining about congestion in their facilities. So in what ways can we actually put an end to the phenomenon, particularly as there are concerns about implications on national security and also the ability of the prison service to discharge its duties? Fortunately, we've been joined by Superintendent Kari Jachem, Chief Superintendent Kari Jachem. I'm apologizing for that. But Chief Superintendent Kari Jachem, who is the Director of Public Affairs for the Ghana Prison Service, he's helping us understand the figures that they've released to us and what it is that they're doing to put an end to all of this. You're welcome, sir, to the program.
Thank you, ma'am.
The figures are really staggering. The fact that more and more young people are ending up in jail. Are you watching these figures closely as well? And what do you believe may be accounting for what we're seeing happening in our country?
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Right.
First of all, let me say that you said a figure we released today. I want to put on record that these figures were released in the Finder newspaper under the Right Information Act. Okay, so it's not as if we put it out there to set any agenda.
Right, but it's still coming from you anyway.
All right,
yes,
so that's
right.
fine.
Just to put it in context, I believe.
Right.
Right.
So regarding the young persons in our custody, I would say that the service has not conducted any scientific study to come up with any scientific findings. But it's not too difficult for us to hazard guesses. Lack of proper parental care and control, broken homes, unemployment, what have you. These days, it's not like those days where at least a mother will be at home or a father will be at home. These days we have working parents. So many of us are running after our jobs and probably not taking good care of our kids. So when we interact with our inmates, these are some of the issues that come across.
Interesting. But then what's striking is that we have over 7,000 inmates going back to jail. The expectation is that once you are from the prison facilities, you are then reformed, not necessarily kept behind bars and nothing is being done for you. The expectation is that the Ghana Prison Service will reform you so you are able to integrate into society. How come that we're still seeing a flow back of these figures moving back into our prison facilities?
Blessed, I think it's important to state that this is over a 5-year period.
5-year period, right.
Okay, good. Yes, the NRC for the 6th of 1972, which spells out mandate, says that it shall be the duty of the Ghana Prison Service to ensure the safe custody and welfare of prisoners, and whenever practicable, undertake their reformation and rehabilitation. So reformation and rehabilitation is part of our mandate.
It's also part of the mandate.
Yes.
That's right.
So, and we do a lot to reform our inmates. Now, you have figures of those who have returned to our custody. What we are not telling the public is those we have discharged.
Okay.
For instance, if you take 2020, which you put out right, we have a total of 7,905 inmates discharged or released from prison in 2019.
7,905
discharged in 2019.
Right.
Now, if 1,011 had returned to prison and without admitting that these figures were from just the previous year, then I think we should be juxtaposing the figure that had returned to the figure that had been released. I'm saying this because most of the time the mistake we make is that once we say people have returned to prison, then it means that the prison service is not doing anything to reform at all. Now,
but it's not the case.
It's not the case. Going by that alone, figure alone, if we say that over 1,000 have returned out of 7,000, then it means that those who have not returned are more than those who returned. So if we want to say that those who have returned means that the prison service is not reforming anybody at all, then we can also say that those who have not returned means they have been reformed. Do you get my argument?
Right.
So I think it's important to put the figures in context. We do a lot to reform our inmates, but when it comes to people who go out of prison and come back, there are several factors. Okay. One could be, yes, the person has not been properly reformed and therefore he has come back. Right. Two, when he got out of our custody, how was he received at home? Many of our ex-convicts face societal rejection.
Oh, there's stigma.
Stigma is still there.
So reality.
But I'll give you a typical example. Right. So this guy who ran back to us, he was working with a certain woman who employed him after discharge from prison. Right. Then a friend of that woman came and saw him. They said, "Oh, I just watched this boy on this show. He's a prisoner." That's all. The guy lost his job. So if this guy doesn't find anything to do at all, what do you think he's going to do?
They may go back to the activity.
Yes. So the stigma, the societal rejection is also very, very key. Right. People come to prisons, get well reformed. When they go out, that is where the real challenge is. So for us, if you are in a custody and you say, "I'm reformed," or we have seen the signs that we have reformed, the text of it actually is when you go out.
Not when you are...
No. But you can see the signs.
But here's the case, that if you have an inflow back of 7,000, already the prison facilities are, as you've indicated to us some days back, is being congested. So if you have a return of these numbers, that's not helping the situation across the country.
Yes, it's not helping. And that is why, as a nation, we need to pay more attention to our prison system. For instance, it says that it shall be the duty of the Ghana Prison Service to ensure the safe custody and welfare of prisoners, and whenever practicable, undertake their reformation and rehabilitation. The question is it practicable now? And what are we doing as a nation to ensure that the prison service is actually able to reform and rehabilitate our inmates? We may do the reformation. What about the rehabilitation? Reintegration is key to anybody's rehabilitation. If you have given him all the skills, he comes out with a skill, and yet he cannot use that skill because the environment is not conducive. The environment is not favorable. He's not going to stay there. I tell you, there are instances where people are released, they go, and practically walk back and say, "I want to be in prison."
Prisoners walk back
I'm
to
telling
say,
you,
I don't want to go home.
Yes. There are instances where you tell an inmate of his impending release and he begins to cry because he doesn't know what he's going to face out there. So these are some of the factors. I mean, we will be blaming only the Ghana Prison Service, but we are all part of it.
But if you look at the employment requirement for some organizations, they check your criminal record, for instance.
Exactly.
Are you then suggesting that perhaps it's time for us to take a second look at that?
I think so. I think that is one thing, or one law we need to take a second look at. Because, you know, somebody, for instance, who was working somewhere, earning a living, looking after his family, he goes to jail 5, 10, 7, 15 years' time. He comes back, he has lost his job. If the family is not supporting him, what are we expecting him to do? And yet, we have a law which says that you cannot be employed just because you have been in prison. So whatever skill the person might have come out with will be useless. So I think, yes, I will agree with you that probably it's time we took a second look at.
But what you do within your facilities, and help me if I'm wrong, is that you also give skills to some of these inmates.
Yes.
Is it that these skills are not adequate enough in building them, making them entrepreneurs on their own when they walk out of your prisons?
Some are enough, but when they go, what do they start with? Startup capitals. The person may have the skill, but he doesn't have anything to start with. Okay? I would agree with you, yes, we need to do more to reform and rehabilitate our inmates. Yes, we need to do more as a nation. The appropriate structure that need to be in place might be put in place. As we speak, there are still prison facilities that are not purpose-built, meaning that they were not initially built for the holding of prisoners in the first place.
Oh, you have some facilities
yes,
like that?
We still have facilities.
Is it safe, security-wise?
Yes.
Putting out some of these facilities?
Oh, yes. The thing is that we have two types of security.
Okay.
The dynamic security and the static security.
Okay.
The static is the physical structures, and then the dynamic is made up of the personnel who have to use these structures in ensuring security.
Right.
And so when you know that your static is defective, then you need to up your game in the dynamic.
So you have the personnel, but then in terms of the static, that's where there seems to be a challenge.
Yes.
So, for instance, which of the facilities across the countries are you having challenges with in terms of the congestion and other associated issues?
In terms of congestion, I would say Insalmi is the key because it was built to hold 851 inmates. As we speak, we have close to 3,000 inmates there. So it's hugely congested.
That's more than 100%.
Yeah.
800
and it's one of the safest facilities we can hold our inmates into because it's one of the purpose-built, prison facilities. And so no matter what you do, you keep having the numbers in there.
The situation must be very terrible in there, isn't it?
Well, but we are managing.
Are you not being diplomatic about it? The fact that, well, you work with the prison service, so you're not painting a true picture of what's happening. And just on your screens and behind us, you can see excerpts of that documentary by said Kwame Boateng, where, just take a look at what's on your screens now. People packed like sardines, I'm sorry for using that word, but that's the reality in our prisons. The point has also been made about non-custodial sentencing. And Chief Superintendent, we may have to talk about that as well. The concern that people still plantain, or let me be lay about it. And you've heard such examples as well. And then they go to jail for 10, 15 years or more. Well, depending on the case. But there are people who commit bigger crimes and may not end up even in jail. So that has been one of the concerns as well, that we need to review our sentencing regime. What's your take on that, really? Yeah,
thank you very much. The Ghana Prison Service has noticed this long ago. And so we from our own corner, have come up with a new bill which has a provision for some non-custodial sentences, which is going through the review process. It's gone to Attorney General, it's back to us. We'll send it back. We'll be asked to do a few things. And so there's a bill on that. And I want to agree with you that, yes, that is one thing that will go a long way in reducing the congestion of our prisoners. Because, of course, as you mentioned, some of the offenses may not necessarily have to be kept in send people to prison, I should say.
Chief, just stay with me a while longer. Let's also bring in Dr. Adam Bona. He's a security analyst, so he understands quite a lot of things happening in this regard. Thank you, Doc, for your time. So here we are, and we're hearing from the Ghana Prison Service, giving us, first of all, statistics on younger people committing more crimes and going to jail. And then we have ex-convicts running back to these facilities. What's your take, first of all, on the statistics that we're getting from the Prison Service?
Yeah, good afternoon, and good afternoon to my brother, Chief Superintendent Courage, Chip. I must say, despite the challenges to the Ghana Prison Service officers there himself and the team, they've done quite well with regards to ensuring that those who are in their custody, we don't often hear people escaping left and right, and also doing their best, despite the meager resources we have always extended to them. Especially, you take an inmate who is giving 1 CD 80 pesos. 1 CD 80 pesos cannot feed an infant in this country. And, you know, infants, we don't have children in our prison. When I say children, I mean almost everybody is old enough to eat a bowl of kinky. How much is a bowl of kinky? Don't talk about fish and pepper and all that. And so we give them 1 CD 80 pesos. The facilities are really nothing to write home about. And so I say that if you go into a country and you want to know how well that country is dealing with its human rights, visit their prisons. That will tell you how well they are dealing with their human rights. And what you are seeing in most of these prison facilities is, I say, a tip of the iceberg. No one is talking about the prison warden. Most prison wardens have been inflicted with, you know, skin diseases, all forms of illness, and their only reason for being there is to probably provide a service that would ensure that myself and you, when we sleep. But it looks like not much, even though I would say some resources have gone there. If you look at averagely what is going in there, or what is on budget and what is extended to them, is really nothing to write home about. So I would say that, blessed. As far as I'm concerned, we have a big challenge before us. Some of us have been doing this over the years, following up on this together with yourself. You know, so your colleague who, you know, have been doing this reporting. Some of us have been following and, you know, speaking to Courage and his people and all that. But unfortunately, not much has changed. And so as far as I'm concerned, this issue about, you know, between 12 to 35-year-olds going to prisons is something that, for me, we, as a nation, it looks like we haven't really turned our attention to the plight of the prison officers themselves and the people they are supposed to be ensuring that they are in safe custody. Because if you want to take care of prisoners well, then you must take care of those who are taking care of the prisoners. And so I look at it from various dimensions, and usually we only talk about the prisoners. But I will tell you that it's multifaceted when it comes to prison issues in this country. He talked about, I heard him speak about Insaum.
Right.
Insaum is one of the oldest prisons, you know, we have in this country, one of the safest, I think the safest or so. But the truth is that we should have, you know, rehabilitated it, ensured that they had, you know, proper medical facilities. They had, what do you call it, machinery workshops. They have what it takes to train inmates so that they don't have to go and come back. And I tell you that I have spoken to prisoners, ex-convicts, and they will tell you that they feel, they don't feel wanted when they are released. So sometimes they intentionally will commit crimes, they you know, just to be sent back to prison. And sometimes they will tell you the prison they even want to go to. It means we have we have a country on our, we have a challenge on our hand, and I would have wished that this issue is dealt with holistically going forward.
That's a very serious issue you're raising, but then many experts are bringing in the aspect of the sentencing regime, the fact that we find alternatives in terms of criminal prosecution. What's your take on that, really? The fact that when people commit less intense crimes, we could find some other forms of punishments for them and not necessarily choke the pre-existing facilities which are already congested.
Well, I must admit, you see, it's multifaceted. And this afternoon when I spoke to Joy FM, your sister station, midday, I raised it. Why must you sentence somebody who is stealing a bunch of plantain to prison, to a fine of, let's say, 600 cedis, or you go to prison for 3 months? Why do you do that? Give the person some community sentence and let the person go and remove baller, clean, do other manual, don't keep them in custody, look for money to feed them. And so we have somewhat, I call it some rigid, I call them a criminal justice delivery system. And the criminal justice delivery system is not just with the prisons, the wardens and the inmates that they keep, but it starts from the day the guy is arrested. I tell you that police officers commit swoops. Listen, it's not just, they commit swoops. They undertake swoops. And when these people are sometimes arrested, you find yourself at the wrong place at the wrong time. They bundle all of you together. They are bundled into court. Some of them don't even understand the language in which, they act, okay, we'll remand them into prison custody. The next day, the police officer who is supposed to be in charge, or the crime officer, has been transferred. They take them to Insaume, take them wherever they take them, and they are there. And the prison officers cannot, on their own, take them to court. So mine is that the non-custodial sentence is very, very important. I tell you what, if you go into most of these people, if you go into their case files, you notice that most of them are repeat offenders that if we had attempted to be a bit, a bit circumspect, a bit more, understanding with regards to maybe committed this a misdemeanor, or maybe, something that is not first degree, and we gave this person maybe some community sentence and go and clean, go and weed, go and do this. We will not pack our prisons with what
I see. I'll
it?
come back to you to find out if this is the time to start a major exercise to decongest our prison facilities. But let me bring in Chief Superintendent Karija as well. You've heard the points that he raised. For instance, the issue about feeding even within the prison facilities. It appears you're giving 1 cedi 80 pesos. That's the allocation per an inmate for a day.
Yes.
But that's
that is
not
true,
sufficient.
and you will agree with me that is woefully inadequate.
Right.
And I tell you, but for our agricultural activities, the situation would have been more serious. And because we undertake agricultural activities, we are able to supplement what is provided by government. And that is what is saving the situation, as we speak. But it's still a big, big challenge.
So 1 cedi 80 pesos is supposed to cater for an inmate for
3 square meals.
Whoa.
Yes, it's per day.
And for how long has this situation persisted?
I think the last time we had a review was in 2012. That was when we had a review.
So from 2012,
it was 60 pesos, right. And it was increased to 1 Ghana cedi, 80 pesos.
Would there be a need for an increment anyway at this?
Oh yes, there is a need, and the Prison Administration, together with the Prison Service Council, have been engaging government, and the discussions are quite positive. So we're hoping that not too from now, we may see some reviews.
Let's see about that, and let's see how that goes. But there's also one critical point Dr. Bona raises about even the safety of your personnel as well. Due to the congestion, it appears that many of your servicemen are also being infected, as he's pointing out. Is that the case for some of the prison
some
wardens?
Infections are contagious.
Right.
For instance, skin infections, for instance. Some of our officers get infected, yes. For instance, when COVID-19 came, some of our officers in line of duty also got infected because they got in touch with inmates who were infected. So yes, these challenges are there, yeah.
And since you're talking about COVID, that's perhaps one of the main reasons why we should be learning the lessons from such a pandemic and other, infectious diseases, and to space out our prison facilities. Have you picked up any lessons from there, and what are some of the changes that we're seeing within your facility nowadays? How is the story changing within?
Well, one thing we have learned from the experience of COVID, which is positive, is the fact that our hygiene regime has changed. A lot of our inmates are now more, aware of the environment and how to keep the environment clean and how to keep themselves clean. That is one that is positive. And then the expansion you talked about is also very important. I think that we need to modernize many of our prisons and build new ones. And I must say that what the Church of Pentecost, for instance, has come on board to do is the way to go. The Church of Pentecost has come on board to build 5 camp prisons, one of which has been commissioned at Ejura and is doing quite well. The second one is complete, almost complete, waiting commissioning for operation in Insawam. And I think these are some of the modern facilities we need to put in place as a nation for our prison system.
What's a modern prison requirement? What's this supposed to look like? And as compared to what we have in terms of pre-existing facilities across the country?
I am not an architect, but I'll tell you that if we want to talk of a modern prison which is geared towards reforming and rehabilitating inmates, the one thing that is key are the workshops, the training workshops, where we can have workshops that are properly equipped with tools and equipment that will help in training inmates. Many of them, as we use now, are makeshift structures, and the tools and equipment are obsolete, that are not very good and very effective in training the inmates very well. So if we want to talk of modern prisons that should have adequate training and reformation facilities, then we need to be looking at some of these structures being put in place.
In the meantime, I presume that, yes, you may not have the structures itself readily available in, say, a year or two, but obviously help from other NGOs and benevolent persons may be very much welcome at this point.
Very much welcome. And I might say that quite a number of them have been very helpful over the years. One thing I feel also to mention is the intervention by our partners who gave us donations. So the donations we receive, plus the prison agricultural activities, that is what is helping us, manage the situation in the face of the woefully inadequate ration that we receive. And so, yes, other partners coming on board to support the prison system, or partner government to support the prison, for instance, like the Church of Pentecost is doing, is very, very much welcome.
Just within yourselves, as maybe leadership of the Ghana Prison Service, are you considering a decongestion exercise? And what approach will that take?
Well, yes, we have been considering that and taking some steps. You know about the Justice for All program, which was done in partnership with the Judicial Service, which, first of all, seeks to give justice to whom justice has been denied, because it says justice delayed, justice denied. And then, as part of it, we have inmates who get bailed finally, those who get convicted finally, those who get freed entirely. And so the resultant effect is that it reduces the congestion in our prisons. Then 2, the expansion project, for instance, as mentioned, like the Church of Pentecost is doing. Government has also started a remand facility at Insawam. It's an 800 capacity facility. And so if that is also completed and put into operation, reduce the remand numbers also in our custody, because the remands will be on their own as well. And then looking at non-custodial sentences, I think these are some of the measures we can take as a nation to reduce the congestion in our prisons.
Dr. Bona, let me bring you in. The concern about an imminent decongestion. Some say it should happen right away. I don't know what your thoughts are on this. When should we carry out that massive exercise? And perhaps this may start from the ministerial level. When should that be sanctioned by government for us to decongest our prisons?
Well, I think decongestion is very important, and it should happen immediately, but it needs to be done carefully so that we don't end up freeing people who could come back quickly into the society and harm society. So what my recommendation would be, just like my brother Courage Achem, Chief Superintendent Courage Achem said, there's a bill that is going through the process and, hopefully would be in Parliament soon. Let's quicken that so that if the point of entry, we are able to stop piling up the numbers, whilst we deal with the existing numbers. That would be the way to go. But immediately, like he said, some of the facilities are under construction. And so I would want to see those who probably didn't warrant to, I will call them some hungry, offender is going to steal some plantain. You give him 3 months or a month or something. Some of these people, we can look at those facilities that are under construction, nearing completion, put them into habitable way, and then maybe move them there as soon as possible to be able to decongest, the existing facilities, whilst we get the bill passed into law quickly, and then put in the structures to ensure that it's not every offender who must end up in jail. And, there's a thin line dividing our freedom and, custodial, sentence, because then one moment you are free, the next moment you are gone. So we should all be concerned about what the prevailing situation at our, prison facilities. For me, it is despicable, even though something is being done. I think the process of doing it is a bit slow. Some resources has gone in there. And also even the prison warden inmate ratio is too low. I don't know whether my brother Courage mentioned it to you. The prison warden inmate ratio, there is an international standard. And we are doing about, 10 times that number. Correct me, Courage, if I'm wrong.
Is that the case?
There has been a remarkable improvement. Government is aware of this, and so quite a number of recruitments have been done in recent times, and so the situation is improving, I might say.
Dr. Bona,
Yes.
that's a response on this.
Yeah, so as I am aware, the situation is improving, and so because I know last year they had 2,000 more personnel to be recruited. Some of us advocated the number should have been pushed to 5,000, whilst you give the police 10,000 and then the fire and the rest. Because the truth is that these are the people who must ensure that we are safe. And so if the numbers are small, then you realize that they get tired. Sometimes care of the prisoner becomes a problem, because then when you are tired, obviously is the prison, the prisoner who suffers. So as far as I'm concerned, going back to your question again, I would advocate that let's look at a way to deal with it. We have facilities under construction. What can we do quickly to make them habitable, to move those who would not cause any harm to, society, move them there. Whilst, we pass this bill into law, ensure that we are not sending everybody who, and it's happening. As we speak today, if you are taken to court and you stole some plantain, the investigator says, okay, or you are sentenced. You have to come and pay a fine of 600. Some people can't pay. If you can't pay, you have to go to prison. What are the other alternatives? So I think that we need to deal with this situation as soon as possible. And I mentioned the plight of the prison officer. We have statistics that is talking about prison inmates between 12 or so to 35. What about the plight of the prison officers? I am also interested in it. And as as someone who plays a key role in the area, some of us have been talking about trying to see what can be done to ensure that they are properly housed, their welfare is good. Vehicles, I know some vehicles, I know some improvement has come in, but some of us want to see more improvement coming the way of prison officers. How many times do we talk about prisoners and prison officers? Occasionally, when some statistics are thrown into the public domain, we get to talk about it. So sometimes I call them the forgotten important segment of our security sector, because we only talk about them when statistics come out. If not, and also in many countries, when there is a revolt, when there is, prisoners are revolting, but we hardly hear that in this country. Or when there is a jailbreak like we've seen in Nigeria. Fortunately, our prison officers have ensured that over the years, our prisons have been safe. So we hardly get to discuss them. But I think that let's not leave this conversation here. We should carry on periodically, engage those who are supposed to deal with this issue, engage the general public, ensure that, because Courage knows that some of the things,
Right.
I mean, he speaks boldly, but some of the things, some of us probably can say them. You put it the way it's supposed to be put.
And I'm grateful that
yeah.
you're pointing all of that out for us. I would have to leave the conversation here. Thank you so much, Dr. Adam Bona. Let's wrap up with Chief Superintendent Courage Achem. So what's your final word on this, and what's your appeal also to stakeholders involved in dealing or tackling this, this challenge that you have at the prison facilities?
All right. Thank you very much. First of all, we are talking about people leaving prison and coming back to prison. And as I mentioned earlier, one key factor is the stigma. I just would want to appeal to all of us that when our own people go to prison and come back, let's try to receive them. If we make their resettlement, conducive enough, they will be able to resettle and not go back into crime and find themselves in prison again.
I'm grateful that you've been able to join us, but